Hello everyone, my name is Emake, or as you guys know me, Emmond, and I'm here with another video from Tom Clancy's The Division. So, since the inception of Tom Clancy's Division, the community has been divided regarding its stance on PvP and PvE and the endgame and how they interact with one another. Aspects of the game like griefing and the problems which compounded the issues such as cheating have ruined the experience for many players. Even with an overhaul, there's one thing missing within the Division community, and that missing thread is harmony. If it was up to me, I would argue that the PvP experience in this game has to exist in a different space in order to work. I don't mean just a space where things like damage and weapons or skills work differently, but where there are also different sets of rules in the general PvP gameplay overall. Now, for the sake of shortness and the fact that I can't read everybody's mind, I'm going to make an educated guess and say that there are three major categories of players in Tom Clancy's The Division. Camp A categorizes themselves as PvP players, Camp B can categorize themselves as PvE players, and Camp C just enjoys and participates in both aspects of the game. Within these three camps, there are major disagreements within how major aspects of the game should be structured. Just watch some of the videos across the YouTube space and read the comments, and people all hold different opinions on how the game should be. I'm not saying that there are other games where everybody has the same unified stance on what things should look like, but the Division community is lacking a lot of the harmony that a game like this actually needs. Which brings me to the major reason that I think that this community is actually still working its way through its mixed feelings. Now, a few weeks ago, Terry Spires, who's in charge of PvP at Redstorm, he tweeted this question to the community and asked players to give their feedback. Now, I almost typed out what I wanted to see, but then I just decided to kick back and read what the community was actually saying. This is one of the best ways to get a read on the pulse of the community, just to read what people think and hear them out. Now, I probably went through 100 of these 300 tweets before I actually realized that most of the comments were asking for the same things, and most of the players have been requesting these things for a while. A lot of the common themes that were on this thread were pretty much a system where people wanted a better risk and reward system that actually matters when you go into the dark zone. Now, some disagreed, and as I continued to scroll, there was a constant string of requests that were centered around most player preferences that would pretty much make it easy to place them in Camp A, B, or C. Now, there were glimpses of folks who wanted various changes to the rogue system, which didn't show any bias. They were more on the middle ground and were neutral, but all in all, there seemed to be a major divide within the community. Now, a big example was when somebody suggested a PvE dark zone with different elements, and someone else responded and said that there should never be a PvE dark zone. But when that person was asked why shouldn't there be a dark zone and how it was going to affect them, they pretty much said that the PvE dark zone will make the PvP dark zone empty. And pretty much most of the objections that I've heard against the PvE dark zone are along the lines of how the dark zone needs to be a chaotic place where anything can happen. Some other players argue that the dark zone needs to be a place where only the strong survive. And these arguments are reasonable, but it doesn't address the question as to how a PvE dark zone would affect the PvP player. The truth is this: some players would like to enjoy the experience, the enemy spawn ratio, and the dynamic design of the dark zone, even with the danger and a sandbox nature, just free roaming without any grief and disturbance from other players. This will actually highlight the quality of the dark zone as a uniquely designed sandbox where you can test your gear, skills, and survivability on your own terms. A PvE dark zone wouldn't hurt the PvP because a PvP dark zone would also exist in its own space where the option to test your gear, sets, skills, and also survive with a higher difficulty with the player versus player interaction is also existent. Some folks have also expressed that a PvE dark zone will be boring, but there's no evidence to that since we have not even actually tested a PvE dark zone to even know what it's going to look like. In my opinion, all these opposing views to a PvE dark zone are just dancing around the issue, and it will help everyone if someone just comes out and say it. Most PvP enthusiasts want to prey upon unsuspecting players and grief them in the dark zone. It's become a major theme in the Division, especially since there's no reward and risk system tied into the dark zone currently. The original dark zone was advertised as a place where you could get the best loot, but that's not the case anymore, since any NPC can grant you decent gear and you have blueprints at your disposal. With all these being said, I'd like to add my input to Terry's question, but before I do so, here's what I see right now. The current Division game is currently a game where PvP and PvE are interconnected. If this would be the case in the Division 2, then one of the responses to Terry's questions still is the best solution, and that is a better risk and reward system that needs to be at the center of the entire game. The central question regarding the reward side of this suggestion needs to be answered, and the central question regarding the risk side of the PvP game also has to be answered. And here are two questions that I'm going to pose. What are the consequences of going rogue, and what is the reward to go rogue? To me, if this these questions are answered properly, we're going to have a fun PvP game, because if the rewards are actually worth it, more players are going to be incentivized to go rogue. On the reverse side, if the consequences were actually really heavy, as one player had also suggested, that if you go rogue, then you have a random chance to lose some of your gear, then the challenge is now increased and players will be in a position to actually rethink their actions whether to go rogue or not. Now, this will eliminate the PvE Dark Zone argument, because now the risk and reward system does not need for a separate PvE or PvP Dark Zone, because now players have to actually consider the risk before engaging in the rogue activity, or look toward getting the rewards if they were to go rogue. The second aspect of my argument is scarcity. The loot right now in the game is actually too much, and it's going to be very hard to convince anyone that in a looter shooter, the rogue system mechanics are actually worth engaging in for the rewards. Hence, this is where the PvE game will be much more valued than it currently is, and forms a player arc where players have to actually grind good gear and face the risk of losing some of that gear if they die in the Dark Zone. Now, this player arc is going to create sustainability within the game, because now players are in a position where they are going to farm for gear and then also risk losing that gear if they were to die in the Dark Zone. This is going to make for replayability and eliminate the issues of having a higher gear score all through the game. Now, that being said, this needs to be done in a reasonable manner so that RNG doesn't put a lot of players off when they're searching for gear that they can't get. Now, this is a daunting task for Massive, and to be honest, they can simply resolve the issue if they separate PvP and PvE and have them exist in much different parameters, because as it seems, The Division 2 seems to be toning down a lot of the RPG elements and is moving to a more shooter-heavy side of things, which isn't a bad thing, but it may limit the wide variety of playstyles available to the players, and also the lore of the story, which is supposed to be some kind of sci-fi high-tech shooter, is going to be greatly affected if Massive does not, in a sense, balance the skills with the shooting aspect of the game. So the three fundamental requirements for a solid PvP experience, in my opinion, is scarcity, high risk, and high reward. If these three aspects are well balanced, then we may see a Division 2 game that has what it takes to bring new players to the franchise. Let me hear what your thoughts are in the comment section below of this video, and if you're yet to subscribe, please do so for more Division content. I'd like to hear your thoughts, mainly because this is an ongoing discussion and I feel like our voice is actually able to change Massive's stance, or they may actually be in a place where they already have a direction and they're gonna go with it. But I hope out the door Division 2 actually comes out strong and we're not having to make changes after the game lands. Thanks for your time and your audience, and I see you in my next video. Peace.